A quiet neighborhood in Tucson, Arizona, is currently the center of a national mystery that feels more like a high-stakes thriller than a real-life investigation. But for Savannah, a woman many Americans recognize from their morning television screens, this isn't a headline. It's a living nightmare that has stretched across 54 agonizing days. Her mother, 84-year-old Nancy, vanished from her childhood home in the dead of night, leaving behind a trail of blood, a ripped-away security camera, and a family shattered by the unthinkable. As federal investigators and local police dig into the evidence, the questions are only getting darker. Was this a random act of violence, or was Nancy targeted because of her daughter's fame? In this video, we are breaking down the exclusive details of the disappearance, the chilling ransom notes, and the moment the family realized they weren't just dealing with a missing person, but a calculated kidnapping. If you want to stay updated on this developing case and help bring awareness to Nancy's story, please hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. It truly helps us keep these stories in the spotlight. The timeline of Nancy's disappearance begins on what should have been a standard, peaceful weekend in the desert. To understand the gravity of what happened, you have to look at the environment Nancy lived in. This was her sanctuary, the home where she raised her children, and the place she refused to leave even after her husband passed away decades ago. She wasn't a woman who could simply wander off. At 84, Nancy struggled with severe back pain. On her best days, she could barely make it to the mailbox. So when her children realized she was gone, the wandering theory was dismissed almost instantly. The scene they found was a stark contrast to the quiet life Nancy led. The back doors of the house were propped wide open, a detail that immediately signaled a breach of security. Inside, her phone, her purse, and her vital medications were all left behind. For an elderly woman in constant pain, leaving without her medicine isn't just unlikely, it's a death sentence. The initial confusion of the family, the frantic calls to hospitals, the hope that perhaps she had a medical episode and was taken by paramedics, quickly evaporated when they looked at the front doorstep. There, they found blood. This wasn't a medical emergency, it was a crime scene. The most chilling piece of evidence discovered early on was the Ring camera. It hadn't just malfunctioned, it had been violently yanked off the wall. Someone didn't want to be seen. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. Savannah's brother, a man with a background in military intelligence and a career as a fighter pilot, saw the tactical nature of the scene and reached a conclusion that most people only see in movies. He told Savannah point blank, "I think she's been kidnapped for ransom." It's a sentence that no daughter is prepared to hear, especially when the realization hits that your own success and public profile might have been the catalyst. Savannah's voice breaks when she recounts that conversation, the crushing weight of guilt settling in as she wondered if her career in the public eye brought a predator to her mother's bedside. "I'm so sorry, Mommy," she whispered in a recent interview, a haunting apology for a crime she didn't commit, but one she fears she inadvertently invited. As the investigation transitioned from a missing persons case to a kidnapping probe, the silence was broken by the arrival of ransom notes. This is where the case takes an even more twisted turn. In the digital age, kidnappings for ransom are increasingly rare in the United States, usually replaced by cybercrimes or different forms of extortion. But here, multiple notes were sent, some even reaching media outlets. The family had to navigate a minefield of digital vultures and fakers who tried to capitalize on their grief. Savannah noted that while many of the notes were deemed fraudulent, sent by people who she says need to look deeply at themselves, two of the communications were different. These were the notes the family responded to. These were the ones they believed were real. Imagine the psychological toll of receiving a letter from the person holding your mother, an 84-year-old woman taken in her pajamas, without shoes, into the harsh Arizona night. The demands weren't just about money, they were a power play. The involvement of technology companies and federal investigators eventually led to a breakthrough, the recovery of video footage. Although the Ring camera was ripped away, investigators managed to piece together images of the person who approached the door. Savannah describes the images as absolutely terrifying. It wasn't just a face, it was the realization of a nightmare. To think of that individual standing over her mother's bed in the middle of the night is a level of terror that is hard to process. Yet, as the images became public, a new kind of trauma emerged for the family, the cruel speculation of the internet. In the absence of a quick arrest, the court of public opinion turned its sights on the family itself. Rumors began to swirl that the kidnapping was an inside job, pointing fingers at the very people who were most devastated. Savannah had to watch as her sister and brother-in-law, who were her mother's primary caregivers, were scrutinized by strangers online. It added pain upon pain, forcing the family to move houses multiple times to escape not just the kidnapper, but the aggressive onlookers and speculators who were closing in on them. The hunt for Nancy is now in its 54th day, a duration that often changes the tone of a kidnapping investigation. Statistics usually suggest that the first 48 hours are the most critical, but Savannah and her siblings are refusing to let the trail go cold. They are operating as a single unit, a triumvirate of grief and strength, as some have described them. Her brother's intelligence background and her sister's deep intuition have kept them focused on one goal: bringing Nancy home. They've even made direct appeals to the kidnapper through video messages, begging for mercy for a woman who is essentially defenseless. They've highlighted her medical needs and her vulnerability, hoping to reach whatever shred of humanity might be left in the person who took her. But as the days turn into weeks, the focus has shifted slightly from a frantic search to a spiritual endurance test. Savannah recently returned to New York, a decision that she says was one of the hardest of her life. Looking out the airplane window at the Arizona desert, she felt like she was abandoning her mother in the vast, beautiful, but unforgiving landscape. She recalled her mother's own advice on grief, given years ago when Savannah's father passed away at just 49. Nancy had told her then that in the face of tragedy, you have to decide and do. You have to get up, put one foot in front of the other, and keep moving, because that is what survival looks like. It's that grit that Nancy instilled in her children, a quiet, grounded faith that isn't about pious show, but about earthy, hard-fought resilience. Savannah's faith has led her to a place of strange peace, even without answers. She shared a moment where she felt she heard a voice, one she believes was divine, telling her, "You do know where she is. She's with me." Whether that means Nancy is still alive or has passed into the next life, Savannah is holding on to the belief that her mother is protected. But for the rest of the world, and for the investigators still on the ground in Tucson, the search for physical answers remains a high-priority mission. Someone out there knows where Nancy is, and as the February report continues to follow this, the message remains clear. It is never too late to do the right thing. The logistical nightmare of a high-profile kidnapping in a suburban American neighborhood is something most people only witness through a screen, but for the residents of Tucson, the reality was far more invasive. As the investigation into Nancy's disappearance hit the one-month mark, the perimeter of the case began to expand. Federal authorities, including the FBI's Child Abduction and Serial Killer Tracking Task Force, which often assists in high-stakes adult kidnappings, began a digital dragnet. They weren't just looking at the physical evidence left at the home, they were looking at the digital footprints surrounding the property for weeks leading up to the event. This wasn't a crime of passion or a sudden impulse. The way the Ring camera was disabled, the specific timing of the entry, and the knowledge of the home's layout suggested a level of surveillance that is deeply unsettling. Investigators have been scouring tower dumps, which are essentially massive harvests of data from nearby cell towers, to see which devices were active in the vicinity at the exact moment the back doors were propped open. While the technical side of the investigation hummed in the background, the human side was fracturing. Savannah speaks candidly about the blur of those middle weeks. Imagine being one of the most recognizable faces in American news, yet having no information about your own mother's safety. She described nights spent in the Arizona desert, moving from one safe house to another, literally holding hands with her siblings as they navigated the darkness. It wasn't just the kidnapper they were hiding from. It was the intensity of a public that sometimes forgets there are real people behind the headlines. There were reports of individuals showing up at the childhood home, trespassing on what Savannah calls hallowed ground, trying to get a glimpse of the crime scene or take photos for social media. This lack of respect for a family in mourning or in waiting is a modern tragedy in itself. It forced the family into a defensive crouch, making an already impossible situation feel like they were being hunted from two different sides, the criminal in the shadows and the spectators in the light. One of the most heart-wrenching aspects of this ongoing ordeal is the impact on the next generation. Nancy wasn't just a mother. She was a grandmother, a nana who was deeply embedded in the lives of her grandchildren. Savannah recalls the constant stream of messages from her own children back in New York. "Mama, any leads? Did you hear anything?" Is there any hope? These aren't just questions. They are the sounds of a family's foundation cracking. How do you explain to a child that their grandmother, who represents safety and history, was taken from her bed? The family had to make the agonizing decision of how much truth to share. Do you tell them about the blood on the doorstep? Do you tell them about the terrifying images caught on the neighbors' cameras? Or do you try to preserve a shred of their innocence while your own is being systematically dismantled? The psychological toll on Savannah's sister and brother-in-law, who lived nearby and were Nancy's daily lifeline, is perhaps the most profound. They were the ones who checked on her, who ensured she had her medicine, and who made it possible for her to stay in that cherished family home. The guilt they carry, the "what if I had stayed 10 minutes longer," or "what if I had checked the locks one more time," is a weight no human is designed to carry. Savannah has been vocal in her defense of them, shielding them from the cruel speculation that often haunts families in these cases. She describes her sister as having special powers of intuition and faith, a woman who has remained a pillar of strength even as her own world was violated. They've spent hours together, not just crying, but praying and analyzing every tiny detail, trying to find the one piece of the puzzle that the authorities might have missed. In a kidnapping case this complex, the family often becomes the most effective investigators because they know the victim's habits better than any forensic team ever could. The emotional anchor of this story lies in the house itself, the structure that held the memories of a lifetime. This wasn't just a building, it was the place where Nancy and her husband built a life, a place she clung to after his death as a way to remain connected to him. Savannah remembers moving there when she was only 4 years old. It's the house where, at 16, she sat on the couch and was told her father had died. It's a place of hallowed ground, where the walls are steeped in the history of a family that has already known profound grief. To have that sanctuary violated by a stranger, to have the dead of night bring a predator into a space defined by love, is a psychic wound that may never truly heal. Savannah talks about the unbearable terror her mother must have felt in those final moments inside the home. An 84-year-old woman, likely confused and in physical pain, facing a threat she couldn't outrun or outmaneuver. This is the point where the story transcends a simple news report and becomes a reflection on the vulnerability we all feel for our aging parents. There is a universal fear in the American heart about the safety of those who raised us. We want them to have their independence, to stay in the homes they love, but we worry about the shadows. For Savannah, that worry became a catastrophic reality. She speaks of her mother not as a victim, but as a noble creature, a woman of wicked humor and quiet strength. Nancy was the kind of person who worked multiple jobs to keep her family afloat after her husband died, who cared for her own mother and a brother with Down syndrome, all while maintaining a grounded, earthy faith. To see a woman of such character subjected to such a cowardly act is what has galvanized the community and the nation. The ocean of love and prayers Savannah mentions isn't just for her fame. It's a collective outcry against the violation of a matriarch. As the search continues, the focus has shifted toward the specific profile of the person who would commit such a crime. Professional profilers suggest that a kidnapping of this nature, targeting an elderly woman in a specific well-known family, requires a combination of desperation and cold calculation. Was the motive purely financial? The ransom note suggests so, but the choice of target implies a knowledge of Savannah's career and the potential value associated with her name. This brings us back to the heart of Savannah's personal struggle, the unbearable thought that her success might have put a target on her mother's back. "If it is me, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice a fragile thread of emotion. This is the internalized blame that predators rely on to weaken their victims' families. But there is a flip side to this high-profile status. While it may have attracted the wrong kind of attention, it also ensured that Nancy's face was seen by millions. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has become a partner in this effort, and the family has even made donations to the organization to help other families who don't have the same platform. They want Nancy's story to be a beacon for all missing persons, a reminder that every name matters. The investigation remains open and active, with authorities recently following leads that stretch across state lines. There is a firm belief among investigators that somebody knows something. In a crime this brazen, the perpetrator usually slips up, a conversation overheard, a sudden change in behavior, or a detail in the ransom notes that points to a specific location. The message from the Tucson Sheriff's Department and the FBI remains consistent. They are not giving up, and neither is Savannah. She is back in New York, back at work, deciding and doing every day, just as her mother taught her. But her heart remains in that beautiful, silent desert, waiting for the phone to ring with the one piece of news that will finally bring her mother home. The silence of the Arizona desert at night is usually a source of peace, but for the investigators assigned to Nancy's case, that silence is a wall they are determined to break down. As we move deeper into the second month of this ordeal, the strategic focus of the search has shifted toward the digital ghost left behind by the perpetrator. You have to understand that in a modern kidnapping, the physical evidence, like the blood found on the doorstep or the damaged ring camera, is only the beginning. Forensic experts are now working with specialized units to analyze the specific way the security system was bypassed. It wasn't just a brute force attack. The perpetrator seemed to understand the blind spots of the property. This has led officials to look into anyone who may have had access to the home in the last year: contractors, delivery drivers, or even local maintenance workers. In the United States, we often feel a sense of security behind our smart doorbells and locked gates, but this case serves as a chilling reminder that technology can be turned against us if someone is watching closely enough. The 2 real notes Savannah mentioned remain the most significant pieces of evidence currently held by the FBI. These aren't just scraps of paper, they are psychological profiles. Behavioral analysts are looking at the language used, the syntax, the specific demands, and even the method of delivery. Was the ransom amount a round number? Was it requested in a way that suggests a knowledge of the family's specific financial standing? These details are being cross-referenced with previous extortion cases across the Southwest. While the family waits in agony, the authorities are playing a high-stakes game of cat and mouse, hoping the kidnapper makes one more contact. Every communication is a digital breadcrumb. Meanwhile, back in Tucson, the community has remained on high alert. Local businesses have posted Nancy's face in every window, and neighbors have organized light the night vigils, keeping their porch lights on until she is found. This communal support is a testament to the impact Nancy had on her neighborhood, but it also keeps the pressure on the person responsible, making it harder for them to move or hide without being noticed. The emotional toll of this unfathomable situation reached a breaking point when Savannah shared the story of her father's death. To truly understand why this kidnapping is so devastating, you have to look at the history of this family. When Savannah was just 16, her life was upended by the sudden loss of her father. He was only 49 years old, a shock that could have broken any family. But it was Nancy who held them together. Nancy, who had never worked outside the home, suddenly found herself a widow with 3 children to raise. She didn't just survive, she thrived, turning a part-time job into a full-scale career, all while caring for her own aging mother and a brother with special needs. This is the woman who is currently missing. A woman who spent her entire life being the shining light and the protector of others is now the one who needs protection. Savannah's description of hearing her mother cry behind closed doors in the early hours of the morning, only to emerge as a pillar of strength for her children, is a powerful emotional anchor in this story. It reveals the quiet, hard-fought faith that Nancy passed down to her daughter. It's a faith that is currently being tested in the most public way possible. When Savannah talks about her personal cost and the guilt of her fame, she is speaking to every person who has ever worried that their success might bring unintended consequences to their loved ones. The community pain in Tucson is palpable because Nancy represented the best of them, the neighbor who stayed in the same house for decades, the friend who always had a wicked remark to lighten a dark mood, and the mother who never stopped fighting for her kids. The violation of her home is seen as a violation of the neighborhood's collective safety. It's why the local authorities are working tirelessly, and why the national media continues to keep this story alive. We aren't just looking for a victim, we are looking for a hero of her own story. As the investigation enters this next phase, the legal and procedural aspects are becoming more complex. Because the kidnapping involves ransom demands across state lines, delivered via mail and digital platforms, it has officially become a federal matter involving multiple jurisdictions. This isn't just a local search anymore. It's a coordinated effort involving the Department of Justice and specialized technical units. One of the key questions being asked by legal analysts is, what happens when the suspect suspect is finally identified. The Ring camera video that Savannah described as absolutely terrifying is the centerpiece of the prosecution's eventual case. But beyond the footage, investigators are looking for trophy items. Did the kidnapper take anything else from the home that hasn't been reported? In many high-stakes kidnappings, the perpetrator takes a personal item to exert further control over the family. The family's decision to partner with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children is a strategic move to keep the case from becoming just another headline. By donating to this cause, they are ensuring that Nancy's name is associated with a broader mission of safety and recovery. Savannah's return to today isn't a sign that she is moving on. It's a sign that she is deciding and doing, using her platform to keep the search active. She knows that the moment the cameras turn away, the pressure on the kidnapper might decrease. By staying in the public eye, she is effectively saying to the perpetrator, "We are still here. We are still watching. We will not stop until she is home." This active voice approach is what differentiates this case from so many others that fade into cold case files. The family is not waiting for news. They are demanding it. They are at peace with their faith, but they are at war with the circumstances. The concept of hallowed ground is something Savannah keeps returning to when she speaks about her childhood home. For most Americans, the home is the one place where the world cannot reach you. It is the place where you are most vulnerable, yet feel most secure. The fact that Nancy was taken in her pajamas without shoes is a detail that sticks in the mind of every viewer. It highlights the absolute lack of mercy shown by the intruder. It wasn't just a kidnapping, it was a total stripping away of dignity. But through the darkness, Savannah has found a way to reclaim that dignity for her mother. By speaking about Nancy's misbehaving humor and her noble character, she is ensuring that the world sees her as a human being, not just a case number or a missing person poster. In the most recent briefings, sources confirm that new details are emerging from the forensic analysis of the physical struggle at the door. The blood found on the doorstep is being processed for DNA that does not belong to Nancy. If a struggle occurred, there is a high probability that the perpetrator left behind biological evidence. This is the one detail that could change everything. In 2026, DNA technology has advanced to the point where even a microscopic sample can lead to a familial match in public databases. This is the high-stakes reality the kidnapper is now facing. They may have ripped away the camera, but they couldn't scrub the microscopic trail they left behind. As Savannah continues to balance her grief with her professional duties, the nation remains captivated by her bravery. It's a bravery born of necessity. As she prepares for the special Dateline edition to share more of the conversation, the goal remains the same: to reach the one person out there who has the missing piece of the puzzle. The desert may be vast, but it cannot hide the truth forever. The quiet determination of the Tucson Sheriff's Department has now reached a fever pitch as they pivot toward the behavioral analysis of the ransom demands. To the average viewer, a ransom note seems like a straightforward request for money, but to the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, it is a window into the kidnapper's soul. They are looking for leakage, unintentional clues about the perpetrator's location, their education level, and even their relationship to the victim. Sources confirm that the language in the two real notes suggested a strange paradox. The person was aggressive enough to take an 84-year-old woman, yet they seem to show a bizarre form of concern for her medical needs in the writing. This suggests a suspect who may not be a career criminal, but rather someone who is desperate, perhaps someone who has watched Savannah's career for years and felt they were owed a piece of her success. This parasocial connection is a growing threat in our modern age, where the line between a public figure and a private family member is increasingly blurred by social media. The technical investigation has also expanded into geofencing. Investigators have obtained warrants to see every mobile device that entered a specific radius around Nancy's home in the 48 hours leading up to the abduction. In a residential neighborhood in Arizona, the pool of suspects is usually limited to residents and invited guests. Anyone outside that norm stands out like a beacon in the data. We've seen this technology crack cases that were once thought to be cold, and for Savannah's family, it represents a digital lifeline. While they wait for the one detail that will lead to an arrest, they are also dealing with the logistical reality of Nancy's home being a crime scene. For weeks, the hallowed ground where they grew up was cordoned off with yellow tape, a physical barrier between the children and the memories of their mother. It's a visual representation of how a single act of violence can freeze a family's history in time, turning a sanctuary into a warehouse of evidence. As we look at the broader impact of this case on the American landscape, it's impossible to ignore the emotional anchor that has kept the public so deeply invested. This isn't just a story about a celebrity, it's a story about the universal fear of losing a parent. Savannah's bravery in returning to her platform is a testament to the decide and do philosophy her mother championed. By standing in front of the camera, she is reclaiming her narrative from the sickos who tried to use her fame as a weapon. She has turned her personal pain into a national conversation about the safety of our elderly and the ethics of digital speculation. The cruel whispers she mentioned, the internet trolls who accused her own family, have been silenced by the sheer weight of the evidence and the family's transparent grief. It's a reminder that in the face of unfathomable evil, the best defense is a grounded, earthy faith and a refusal to let the joy of a life well lived be stolen by a single night of terror. The investigation is still very much a developing situation. With a special edition of Dateline set to reveal even more details, the hope is that a viewer somewhere in the Southwest will recognize a voice, a face, or a piece of clothing from the terrifying video footage. Savannah's message to her mother, "I'm so sorry, Mommy," is a heartbeat that echoes through every scene of this tragedy. But as she said, whether Nancy is on this earth still or in heaven, she knows who she is with. That certainty is the only thing that allows a family to survive 54 days of not knowing. The search for Nancy is more than a legal pursuit. It is a mission of honor for a woman who spent her life caring for everyone else. As the February report continues to track every lead, we are reminded that it is never too late to do the right thing. Someone out there holds the key to this desert mystery, and until that person speaks, a family waits, a neighborhood watches, and a daughter continues to decide and do in the name of the woman who taught her how to be strong. The disappearance of Nancy from her Tucson home remains one of the most complex and emotionally charged cases in recent memory. What began as a confusing welfare check evolved into a federal kidnapping investigation that has gripped the United States. Through the terrifying security footage, the real ransom notes, and the resilient testimony of Savannah and her siblings, we see a family that refuses to be broken by a cowardly act. They have turned their hallowed ground into a fortress of faith, using their platform to advocate for all missing persons while never losing sight of the goal, bringing Nancy home. The decide and do spirit of an 84-year-old matriarch lives on in her children, who continue to fight for answers in the face of unbearable uncertainty. Watching this unfold, you realize that information is the most powerful tool we have. By staying informed and sharing Nancy's story, you are helping to keep the pressure on the authorities and the public eye on the truth. If you have any information regarding this case, please use the contact numbers provided by the Tucson Sheriff's Department. Your awareness matters. If you found value in this deep dive and want to support our mission of bringing credible, high-stakes news stories to the forefront, please like this video, share it with your community, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement ensures that stories like Nancy's are never forgotten and that the search for justice continues. Stay vigilant, keep the faith, and remember that the truth always finds a way out of the shadows. I'm February. This is the February Report. Thank you for watching.